Well, hello there. Welcome back to my channel, guys. Yes, today I have for you yet again another exciting video. And as you can see, this is the very first video of mine on the Word of Faith movement. I know I did say in my update video that I was going to give two videos on this back to back. But as I stated in my update video, it doesn't matter. When I say I'm going to do a video, chances are it can map over still, right? So this is another example because today is not a day where I generally, based on my timetable, where I talk about these kind of teachings. It's supposed to be Adventist and so forth, right? But don't you worry, guys, we'll have more videos on Adventism tomorrow, right? And I won't get to do the back-to-back Word of Faith movement. I realize that I'm just gonna have to scrap the one that I change route then, so to speak, and not give two videos on Word of Faith movement this week. I'll just give you another one next week and the weeks beyond. There should be about 6 videos in total on this. Hopefully I do not exceed that, right? But in this very first video, we are going to basically just give you a little brief idea of what the Word of Faith movement is about. I'll be reading to you from a book called The Kingdom of the Cults, written by the late Dr. Walter Martin, who is basically dubbed as the godfather, or some call him the father of apologetics to cults. He is what you can basically say is one of, if not the most reputable source that you could possibly use re cults and so forth. Like anything you want to know about cults, or you want to touch on their teachings and so forth, he is a reputable source when it comes to cults, right? Because as they say, he's the godfather. He's the one of the main chief persons who first started to combat these cults from the time they emerged, which most of them is like in the it would be like in the 1800s and starting like late 1800s and starting to the early 1900s, right? So he's one of the persons who actually take it upon himself to actually combat these movements. One of the chief persons, should say, right? So with that being said, you know that you can trust the source that I'm going to read this to you from. You can download this book on Google. It should be for free on PDF, right? The Kingdom of the Cults by Dr. Walter Martin. So with that being said, I'm just going to give a little reading on what the Word of Faith movement is all about. So I'll be reading from his book here. Alright, so it says, a growing number of pastors, teachers, and evangelists within the charismatics or Pentecostal circles of the Christian church are advancing what has come to be known as the Word of Faith movement. Its major leaders include such prominent figures as Kenneth Hagin, pastor of Rhema Bible Church and founder of Rhema Bible Training Center; Kenneth Copeland, who is still alive to this day, leader of the Kenneth Copeland Ministries; Frederick Casey Price, pastor of the Los Angeles-based Crenshaw Christian Church Center, with a purported membership of more than 1,600. And of course, this would be the time when this is written, and I'm not sure, I haven't researched this to know if it's still in existence, but if it is, it's likely that it may have exceeded that number by now, right? And David Yonggi-cho, who pastors one of the largest churches in the world in Seoul, Korea. Other well-known Word of Faith personalities includes Gloria Copeland, that is the wife of Kenneth Copeland, Robert Tilton, John Avenzini, John Osteen, who is the father of Joel Osteen, who most of you probably know. He's one of those mega church preachers, right? Or should I say mega church preachers, but he's one of those preachers who basically fortunate enough to have a mega church, much like a T.D. Jakes and those persons, right? Then you have T.L. Osborne, Marilyn Hickey, Jerry Saville, Morris Cerulli, Cassie Tree, Dwight Thompson, Oral, and Richard Robinson. Although Word of Faith doctrines commonly are disseminated through radio broadcast tapes, books, and tracts, primarily they are spread through the Trinity Broadcast Network, TBN, which regularly airs the programs of more than a dozen Word of Faith preachers or teachers. Paul and John Croce, directors of TBN, who are themselves deeply involved in the movement, have also featured Word of Faith teachers as special guests on their Praise the Lord and Praise-a-thon fundraiser programs. The Croce's worldwide platform has mainstream Word of Faith theology to the lives of millions of Christians who would not otherwise have encountered Word of Faith theology. Really has Christianity felt an unbiblical influence as all-pervasive as the Word of Faith movement. It has enjoyed such an increase in acceptance that to the minds of many, it is no longer just a part of the charismatic movement, it is the charismatic movement itself, then, so to speak. Some have labeled its doctrines as heresy, cultic, Gnostic, and a work of Satan. One critic has said that the word faith gospel is perhaps the most subtle heretical system to emerge in our own times. Another has referred to it as a form of transcendentionalism and Gnosticism, from which have come such metaphysical cults as Christian Science, Unity School of Christianity, and now the health and wealth cults. Right? Prosperity gospel. At this juncture, it would be appropriate to quote Hank Hanegraaff, the president of the Christian Research Institute. While the faith movement is undeniably cultic, and particularly groups within the movement are clearly cults, it should be pointed out that there are many sincere born-again believers within the movement. I cannot overemphasize this crucial point. These believers, for the most part, seem to be wholly unaware of the movement's cultic theology. They represent that segment of the movement which, for whatever reasons, has not comprehended or internalized the heretical teaching set forth by the leadership of their prospective groups. If the Word of Faith movement is unbiblical, why is it so popular among Christians? First, the movement uses so much evangelical and Pentecostal terminology and so many biblical proof texts that most believers are lulled into a false sense of security as to its orthodoxy. Second, its message is without question the most attractive message being preached today, or for that matter, in the whole history of the church. D.R. McConnell, a Word Faith critic and a graduate of Word Faith College, Oral Roberts University, observes, seldom, if ever, has there been a gospel that has promised so much and demanded so little. The faith gospel is a message ideally suited to the 20th century American Christian. In an age in America characterized by complexity, the faith gospel gives simple, if not revelational, answers in an economy fueled by materialism and fired by the ambition of the upwardly mobile. The faith gospel preaches wealth and prosperity. The faith gospel promises health and long life to a world in which death can come a myriad of different ways. Finally, in an international environment characterized by anarchy, in which terrorists strike at will and nuclear holocaust can come screaming from the sky at any moment, the faith gospel confers an authority with which the believer can supposedly exercise complete control over his or her environment. Not God exercising that control, them. Right? So it's all about us and what we can do, not what God can do. That is basically what the Word of Faith is all about. The Apostle Paul, writing to the Corinthians about false Jesus, says, I fear lest by any means, and he quotes 1-2 Corinthians 11 verse 3-4, of which I'll put on the screen. This passage perfectly illustrates today's events. Christians everywhere are not merely tolerating, but actually embracing what the Word of Faith is handing out. A false Jesus, another gospel, and a different spirit. Yes, what exactly does the Word of Faith movement teach? Why are Word of Faith doctrines so spiritually and physically dangerous? Can anything be done to correct brothers and sisters in Christ who have succumbed to Word of Faith lies? These questions must be answered if the unity of the Christian faith is going to be preserved. Far too many have already succumbed to Word of Faith teachings in fulfillment of 2 Timothy 4, verse 3-4. And I'll put the text on the screen for you guys to read. Now, with that being said, we are going to examine a few of the Word of Faith movement's teachings. Number 1, God is a being who stands approximately 6 feet tall. We're not looking at all of them, just a few. God is a being who stands approximately 6 feet tall, weighs some 200 pounds, and looks exactly like a man. 2. Faith is the literal substance that God used to create the universe, and he transported that faith with his words. Here essentially is what God did. God fills his words with faith. He used his words as containers to hold his faith and contain that spiritual force and transport it out there into the world, into the vast darkness by saying, light be. That's the way God transported his faith, causing creation and transformation. Yes, the way that he created the world was that, first of all, he conceived something on inside of him. He conceived, he had an image, he had a picture. So basically God had faith, and God used his faith to basically create the things that you can see right now. Now that's absolute nonsense, because when you understand what faith is actually a hope then, so to speak. Hoping that something will happen. God cannot hope. God cannot have faith. All he has to do is say a thing and it is done. If you have that capacity to do something like that, there is no need for you to have faith. Faith is not applicable to you, because as you ask for something or you will something, it will automatically happen. So hence there is no need for faith. So that is absolute rubbish. Right, guys? This is just a few of it. The next one said, basically, I'm going to put on the screen some of their other beliefs. I'm going to try to squeeze it on the screen for you guys to basically see, right? So I won't read out all of it. So the next one, let's look at another one, right? The greatest thing God has conceived of and created was an exact duplicate of himself. This duplicate God named Adam, and God was manifest in the flesh. God eventually went to Adam, this is the next one, who was anatomically male and female, and separated the female part from the male part to make woman. And Adam named this man with a womb Eve. She, like Adam, was a god. Right? So this is just some of their actual belief. Right? Now I'm going to skip those and read the others. While Jesus was on earth, Jesus was wealthy. He lived in a big house, had a great deal of money, and wore the finest clothes. So that's another one of their belief. Although Jesus declared that he walked with God and that God was in him, he never actually claimed to be God. So they are even denying the deity of Christ. In fact, during his 3 years of public ministry, Jesus did not stand in class by himself. He was ministering on earth as a human being, a prophet anointed with the Holy Spirit. Jesus remained sinless so he could redeem men from their satanic natures. Right? In order to redeem man physically, in order to redeem humanity, Jesus had to die spiritually as well as physically. When he died spiritually, he died in the same way that Adam died. In other words, he lost his divine nature and was given he lost his divine nature and was given the nature of Satan. Jesus' death on the cross and his shed blood did not atone for sins. You hear those things, guys? The atonement took place in hell through the devil's torturing of Jesus' spirit for 3 days and 3 nights. Unfortunately for Satan, Jesus was taken to hell illegally because he had never sinned. This technicality enabled God to use his force of faith to revive Jesus' spirit, restore Jesus' divine nature, and resurrect Jesus' body through the resurrection process. Jesus was... So let me repeat, guys. This technicality enabled God to use his force of faith to revive Jesus' spirit, restore Jesus' divine nature, and resurrect Jesus' body. Through the resurrection process, Jesus was born again. You hear those heresies, guys? These are absolute garbage. Right? Now here's the other one. When a person is born again, they experience exactly what happened to Jesus. Their satanic nature is replaced by God's divine nature. The transformation is so identical to Jesus' transformation that Christians become little gods and are as much an incarnation of God as was Jesus. Because Christians are little gods, they have no access to the God kind of faith. The same faith that God has, Christian has those faiths since they are little gods, which can be used to virtually anything they want. It can be used to get virtually anything they want. Christians, rather than God, have authority in the earth over Satan and sickness and disease. And now, there's so many word of faith teachers I see, much more than I can count, where they will tell you that you have authority over Satan, sickness, and disease. Consequently, believers should never pray, God will be done. No. The language that you hear is, I declare and I decree. That's the language you hear. So it's no longer God's will be done, It's now your will be done. This is the word of faith, the word of faith teaching. Let's look at the last three. To obtain specific desires, Christians must do three things. Loose the power of the force of faith by speaking or positively confessing whatever is wanted. So basically you must say, I am healed, I am not sick. Believe that whatever has been confessed will definitely be received. And ignore or look beyond the visible reality. In essence, remain in sickness, low finances, etc. and continue claiming what has been confessed. So if you want to have the money, claim it. And deny being broke, deny being sick. Just claim that you're healthy. Claim that you're rich or you have a lot of money and you will get all of it. Not God's will be done. Whatever you desire then, so to speak. Right? Now here's another one. Here's another one. Anything bad, including poverty and sickness, come from Satan. God's people should have a completely blessed life. A Christian not experience such a life is either in sin or lacking enough faith to bring about what is desired. You wonder what happened to the apostles and the disciples of Christ, because that's not what I see in the Bible. They had to go through a lot of things, but now the word of faith teachers would have you believe that you should have a nice and dandy life as a Christian. That is God's will for your life. And here's the final one. The power of audible confession is so great that sometimes a person can unknowingly bring tragedy upon themselves by making negative confessions. For example, a woman who is mugged may have actually caused that mugging if at any time prior to the experience she made comments like, I live in such a dangerous part of the city that I'm afraid I'll be mugged. The woman should have been saying, I will not be mugged. Similarly, someone who jokingly says, I feel like I'm going crazy, may actually be. Basically then, guys, you can say by what they're saying then, let's say for example, if you live in a volatile community, you shouldn't say to yourself that, what if I go on the road at this time of the night and then gunshots start firing? Or what if I stay at this place, be seated and be playing domino and gunshot starts to fire? You should say that then, according to what they are saying. I'm just giving you an example. Even though if you're in a volatile area, the likelihood that you sitting and playing domino, especially at certain time of the night, the likelihood that shots may start to fire or you may be at the wrong place at the wrong time is great. But the word of faith preachers and teachers will tell you, don't even say that. Now that is very illogical and nonsensical at its best. It's not really being real, and that is a major problem with the word of faith teaching, as I can actually read coming from Walter Martin. Is that basically it tells you that you should deny reality and you yourself make and claim your own reality by just declaring it or having enough faith. So not God, determining reality, You declaring your own reality then, so to speak, and ignoring the actual reality. So that is what word of faith teachings is all about. So this is basically just what you will call it now, an introduction, right? Stay tuned next week where we'll talk about more about these kind of teachings. With that being said, bye bye now.